Hi all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The South can be a messy place, and that's not just because we love to cover our food and gravy. If you're interested in looking beyond the headlines to dig through the deep history of this region, I've got a podcast for you. It's called The Broadside, and it's produced by my friends at WUNC, North Carolina Public Radio. Hosted by award-winning podcast producer Anissa Khalifa, The Broadside explores news, history, and pop culture stories rooted in the American South. Each week, the show explores a single topic impacting the region, and along the way, they zoom out and explain how it reverberates across the country. From the rapid spread of dollar stores and their impact on sustainable food access, to how the word y'all has quietly conquered the English-speaking world. The Broadside is your source for Southern news and culture stories, which might not be on the front page, but definitely deserve a deeper look. So go ahead, follow and listen to new episodes of The Broadside every week, wherever you get your podcasts. Hello and welcome to the season finale of Season 8. This is our 40th episode of Season 8, 2023, and it's just me and you today, me on the mic in a whole talking with my mouth full episode. I've done this every year since I started the podcast. So if you've listened along for a few years, you know what to expect. I'm going to chat about some best bites, some of your favorite episodes, some of my favorite memories, and maybe some things that I've learned along the way, and then give you some information about next season. So yes, there's going to be another season. I can go ahead and get that out of the way. I'm already planning for Season 9, but we're still here in Season 8. So as you know, there were a lot of new features this year. You know, I knew I was going to round 350 episodes, and I still think that the interview format is the way to go because I like conversation and I really enjoy listening to interview shows myself. I mixed it up a little bit by adding in some Southern Fork sustenance episodes. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to those, they're a little more of a deeper dive conversation, more into theory and some of the foundational things that I think about as I approach my work in the culinary world as a cultural critic. I'm not necessarily a restaurant reviewer, but a cultural critic. I really look at food and context. And so I wanted to continue the tradition of Southern Fork, allowing you listeners behind the scenes. And I wanted you to know a little bit behind the scenes of how I work. Who is inspiring me? What kind of things I'm thinking about as I'm developing content for writing, but also for this show and deciding what guests are on the show and just how to think about food. So I have had some really great feedback from you this year on that. So that will definitely continue. Also, what will continue is the road trip, although 2 months plus is a little long for me and Petunia to be on the road. So I think I'm going to do 1 or 2 shorter trips. But yes, road trips are a great way for you to follow along and for me to really get some one-on-one interviews in a region. You can get to really know the flavors there and the people there so that hopefully you'll want to travel there. And then when you get there, you feel like you already know some folks. I want to start this recap of the season by beginning with what you liked. So beyond just the Southern Fork sustenance episodes where I got some direct feedback and that was really fun, a lot of you have engaged with the newsletter, and we'll talk more about that as well. But because, I am the executive producer of this show as well as the host, I can go and dig into those analytics and see the numbers, see what downloads and what impressions were the largest of the season so that I can figure out what your favorite podcasts were. And so I've been able to pull those numbers and I'm going to share them with you now. And if you haven't listened to these episodes, hopefully this is a reminder to make sure and check these out. First up, a lot of you listened to Judith Winfrey, my interview with Judith Winfrey at Love is Love Cooperative Farm in Georgia. Judith is such a force in Southern food and knows a ton about food systems, and she is part of a group running this really cool farm outside of Atlanta that supplies a lot of the restaurants and has a very vibrant CSA and also does seasonal plant sales in order to inspire home gardeners. So Judith is just such a wealth of knowledge. We had a wonderful conversation about farming and about food systems and about what it means to run a cooperative farm. So it was a spring episode, and a lot of you were thinking, I bet it's time to get out in the garden and start thinking about planting things, or you were thinking about signing up for a CSA, I hope so, Community Supported Agriculture Share, so you can support a farm and support your family by giving them the freshest veggies. My interview with Judith was a very popular episode. Then, of course, a lot of you wanted to dream of all the delicious baked goods with Welton's Tiny Bake Shop. So Hannah and Zachary Welton's episode from Charleston, South Carolina was the next up most downloaded episode, and they met and fell in love and in work together in the kitchens at Husk Restaurant in Charleston, and they have since been on a journey on their own, working in Tulum, Mexico, and then coming back to Charleston. They were doing pop-ups and then opened this bake shop, and I am not a big breakfast eater. I'm definitely a green smoothie, and I'm like, I'll go by Welton's Tiny Bake Shop at brunch or lunch, and the line is so busy on the weekends. So they sell out of things. All of their baked goods are just so interesting. They use a lot of local ingredients, and their interview is just really fun. It was really sweet to talk to them. And I like to talk to couples that are in business together sometimes because, we all wonder, how does that work? Well, Hannah and Zachary have a great interview. Then Tampa, Florida, you really, really came out and represented. Bryce Bonsack's episode from Roca and Tampa Heights, the Tampa Heights neighborhood in Tampa, Florida, was my next 2 largest downloads. So many people listened to that. Bryce is a Michelin star chef. Roca was the first restaurant in Tampa to get a Michelin star. And I had the wonderful opportunity, thanks to some folks at the Tampa Bay Convention and Visitors Bureau, to get an interview with him and also enjoy a dinner. He is very busy. He is in the restaurant a lot. He is working, and he is very intelligent, very quick, and he was very open about the journey of getting burned out, and really going to Italy and learning his own cooking style, and then really bringing that back to Tampa, his hometown. So, if you are in the mood for pasta as the weather cools, you're gonna want to listen to this episode if you haven't yet. And then our most popular episode of the season is Scott Peacock of the Black Belt Biscuit Experience in Marion, Alabama. Scott's interview was, in my world, a force of nature. It got a ton of comments. It's still getting a lot of comments. It's getting a lot of comments on YouTube, which is another new thing that I have added this season. You can now listen to the podcast on YouTube. There's no video. It's just audio. Even though I hear your request for video, it's just not a capability that the Southern Fork has at this time. But I'm hearing you and acknowledging it and keeping it in mind for the future. But in the meantime, you can go to YouTube and listen to Scott's interview with me. It was a Southern Fork sustenance conversation. He is a renowned expert on Southern food, and the Black Belt Biscuit Experience is very, very special. You are one-on-one in the kitchen with Scott as he shows you how he creates his biscuit and talks to you about building your own biscuit. But this conversation goes way beyond just flour, butter, and buttermilk and some really good honey. It really dives into really some theories of cooking and theories of just creativity just beyond the stove. I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to interview him. I feel like he's been a part of my kitchen for a long time through his cookbook with Edna Lewis, but it was wonderful to sit in the kitchen at Reverie with him and record this episode. So I'm so glad that so many of you have listened to it and shared it with your friends. And I hope those of you that haven't gotten to that episode quite yet really get the chance to settle in. Maybe, a weekend baking time. Just put that podcast on your Bluetooth speaker while you're deciding to bake something in the kitchen now that, at least it's not getting quite 90 degrees around here anymore. So I went on this crazy road trip, right? And I also just in my job eat. And a lot of you ask, how do you get this job of eating for a living? And I really can't explain it, but I can tell you that I eat a lot, and I never get super bored with it. I love to see the creativity. And so I'm coming to this part of the episode where I am going to share my best bite of season 8. And it's really no big surprise. And that is the lemon blue crab spaghetti at Roca. Oh my gosh. It was so much more than the sum of its parts. And it was so bright. All of the food, the wine pairings were excellent at Roca, but there was something really transcendent about this pasta dish. I love lemon. I'm a Southerner and love the taste of blue crab. And I like pasta, but I was always more of a pizza gal, which you heard probably in that episode with Bryce. But this spaghetti and the way the sauce clung to it, how fresh and bright it was exactly what I wanted to eat after a long day in Tampa in July, being in traffic and being in that hot sunshine and having my sunglasses on, and getting a little hot and sweaty, walking fast to appointments. It was wonderful to sit down and have this course, and it just is something I will always remember about Tampa, this bright, beautiful, summery dish of pasta that didn't have tomatoes in it, as so many summer pasta dishes do. It was, yeah. But I can't drive 7 hours right now and go eat it. But there is an honorable mention this year. The honorable mention of the Best Bite goes to the entire table of food at Talat Market in Atlanta, Georgia. I was really fortunate to spend time with a group of friends and Atlanta friends, and we all got together. Some of us, I connected some new people, and also had some long-term friends there, and we ate pretty much the whole menu. And I think we ordered a couple things twice. It was so good. I really was thrilled to be in the restaurant with Parnas cooking and then have the interview with him the next day. And that's always really important. That's what I did with Bryce. I always eat the food. Hannah and Zachary, I definitely have had their food before I interview them, because I want you to know that you can trust me. I'm not just preemptively doing some PR work and, you're going to hear some marketing about a new restaurant. It really is, I have tried this and I love it and I want to share it with you. And also, it's really important for the conversation that I have with a chef to actually start that conversation at the table with their food and have them show me what they're interested in serving me. And so therefore, they're interested in talking about the next day. But man, that table full of food, I, of course, had to Instagram it majorly, but I still couldn't capture how delicious it was. And I'm not a good enough food photographer to capture the whole thing, the whole table of food without, looking like I was shooting from space. So that is a wonderful place to visit if you're in Atlanta. And since that episode has come out, they are now taking reservations. So if you're in Atlanta next time, you don't have to just walk in. You can plan ahead to go eat at Talat Market. Gosh, it's so close to lunch. And I am really thinking about both of those Best Bites, and also the fact that my lunch is not going to be a Best Bite today. It's basically a sad desk lunch, but that's what peanut butter is for. So it's a little earlier, right, to have this episode than it is in previous years, but 40 episodes is a lot to do. And as season 9 will be returning in the spring and run through the fall, I'm really trying to have the podcast reflect the seasonality, the natural seasonality of the show. I don't cover a lot of holiday baking in the podcast. I have in past years, but I'm more focused on travel and thinking about food and some home cooking. You're not going to call me to help you cook your turkey, is what I'm saying. That's for The Splendid Table. That's for Milk Street. There are a ton of podcasts out there that really, really focus on home cooking. The New York Times has a great podcast as well. So definitely dig in there. And I hope that you're cooking at home at least some of the holidays. And there are 350 shows in the archive. For season 9, we're definitely still going to have those makers, growers, and chefs and behind the scenes conversations. And there's going to be a few cookbook authors as well. But you have 350 shows in the archives of makers, growers, and cookbook authors. And I really, really hope that we can stay connected. The newsletter, if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, you can go to thesouthernfork.com. It's called On the Menu with the Southern Fork. It's once a month. It's free. I publish it on Substack. It comes in your email, or you can read it in the Substack app. But it really just provides you a little background, keeps us connected. I love getting comments from you. It's so nice to see the comments every month. Tell you a little bit about what I'm working on, kind of an essay from me, an original essay from me, what I'm listening to while I'm cooking, and other podcasts and other media I like. I'm writing articles. You'll have those links there. So it's a great way to stay connected while you are waiting for spring to arrive. The newsletter is going to continue monthly, and I really hope to see you over there. And then if you have archive diving time, there is one caveat though. I've been doing this for 8 years, and I had to learn in public. Being a podcast producer means, or it meant to me, everybody goes their own way. I had to do the best I could with interview style and audio, especially audio back in the day with my big vintage looking Yeti mic. And not all of the podcast audio quality is equal. I wish it were different. I wish I had learned faster. I wish I had learned earlier and not been so intimidated about becoming an audio engineer. But the last few years, I really have enjoyed the technical nature and how to get audio sounding better, because I am a podcast listener too, and it kind of drives me batty when I can't hear really well, or I can hear a lot of background noise. Please take that into consideration when you're diving into the archives. But there's still some really, really wonderful conversations and some really wonderful people, especially in those early days, who didn't know what I was doing, but they trusted me. They were willing to be guinea pigs on some of the first seasons and some of the first episodes of the Southern Fork. And they are near and dear culinary people in my life. And so give those a listen and let me know if you like them. If you haven't left a review on your favorite podcast app, especially on Apple Podcasts, every review really helps the algorithm and more listeners find the show. I'm very thrilled to say that the show pretty much lives in the top 100 food podcasts on the Apple Podcast charts. And that could not be without you. I appreciate all the likes every time I post a story on Instagram of where I am, and I appreciate all the comments. It is so fun to get to know people through this work, not only my guests, but listeners. And in this work, I have had listeners reach out when I'm in certain towns, and I've met people for a cocktail or a taco or a glass of wine. And that's just been really, really fun, because that, to me, that's just such an added bonus. I'm doing this work. It is about community. It is about, to me, food and context that's really connected to people or history of a place, or really the land itself. And I love it. And I love sharing these stories with you and inviting you to get to know these people, so that when you visit Tampa, you might want to go see if Bryce has that lemon crab pasta. And then you could say, "Chef, I heard your interview on the Southern Fork." And that's really what makes traveling fun. You want to have new experiences. You want to have that feeling a little bit of being tilted and displaced, so that you can experience being present and exploring something new. But it is also really wonderful to feel like that place isn't full of strangers, that you have somebody that you can remember their name and you know a little bit about them from an interview on this show. So it's even better when you tell me who you are and what you like and where you've been based on the show. That is so much fun. Never gets old. So I really, really appreciate every listen, every share, every like and comment. I do not have a staff of 40, so I see all of it. I read all of your emails, all of your comments. I'm glad to know you. I look forward to season 9 of the Southern Fork. I will see you until then on the newsletter. Remember, it's called On the Menu Southern Fork if you are on the Substack app, or you can go to thesouthernfork.com if you don't know what that is or don't want to worry about it. Go to thesouthernfork.com and sign up, and it will just land in your email. Until then, please stay hungry. Please keep exploring, and yes, support your local food producers. I'll be back to chat with you again in 2024. Thanks a lot.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you gonna eat all that?